welcome again to this panel and to this session on nutrition. As we know, food and nutrition, of course, is the ultimate purpose of agriculture, right? We grow and produce and trade food in order that people can consume it and support their health. This includes the basic food security. This, as we remember, was one of the starting points of the Green Revolution all those years ago, and sadly is still a major concern today. This month, the United Nations is preparing for their General Assembly in New York, and one of the things we are painfully aware of is that we fall short, far short, of the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 2, zero hunger. In fact, of all the Sustainable Development Goals, the progress on this one is by far the slowest. We heard already yesterday that almost 800 million people today are facing hunger. That is 1 out of 11 people in our world. And 2 billion more people experience moderate to severe food insecurity. And these numbers are not coming down, they are rising, driven by conflict, climate events, and economic crises. Our concern today goes beyond the basic food security. It also includes a concern for nutrition and healthier diets. Diets that are diverse, safe, and full of the macro and micronutrients required for the full physical and mental development of every child and every adult living on our planet. As we heard, the numbers affected are even higher when it comes to nutrition. Almost 3 billion people in our world cannot afford a healthy diet on a regular basis. So these are sobering numbers, and numbers that we cannot and don't want to ignore, numbers that put us in the spotlight as agricultural scientists, as professionals, as the business community, and as policymakers. As the World Food Prize community and utilizing DialogueNEXT as a platform, we are committed to do something about this. We know and promote already some positive examples where science-based innovations, business initiatives, or policy changes have made a difference. We are also increasingly aware of what else needs to happen, the connections that we need to make beyond our individual efforts, and we are aware of the gaps, the new ones, and the persistent ones that we need to address. Many of the drivers we heard of that affect the agricultural productivity also affect the nutrition and health outcomes of food and agriculture. These include sustainable, and we need to say that the efforts made to improve agricultural productivity also are needed to improve food, to improve nutrition and health outcomes. And these include sustainable agricultural production, they include crop diversification, genetic improvement of crops and livestock, better soil and natural resource management, as well as the integration with water and soil management. All these have positive outcomes on the nutrition and health outcomes. So what we are saying in summary is that nutrition and health is not an additional agenda, it's not an additional or parallel objective. It gives purpose to agricultural research and development. And in turn, it requires and depends on agriculture to be sustainable, inclusive, and profitable, so that the business rationale can work for nutrition and health as well. So I'm very excited to invite and welcome our panel of very competent, accomplished individuals and institutions that can speak to these issues, to the challenges and the opportunities, and we'll hear from them and their perspectives. We have Ms. Kalaiselvi Sasikumar, a farmer and a fish trader from Tamil Nadu, India. We have Dr. Oliver King, who is the Director of Biodiversity at the Swaminathan Research Foundation in Chennai. We have Dr. Kalyani Raghunathan, a Research Fellow with IFPRI here in Delhi. We have Dr. Shirley Tarawali, the Assistant Director General of ILRI, the Livestock Research Institute in Nairobi, Kenya. And we have Dr. D.K. Yadawa from the Deputy Director General of Crop Science at ICAR. So we would like to hear from them, their perspectives and their experiences and their ideas on how to make agriculture deliver better on nutrition and health. And we want to start with our colleague, Ms. Sasikumar from Tamil Nadu. In your experience, if I may ask you, how does the access to diverse foods, including fish, help and impact the nutrition and health of the community you work in? I understand you're also a community leader beyond being a fish trader, and that you're very concerned about the general health and nutrition status of your community in Tamil Nadu. So please share with us your experience and your ideas on fisheries. Thank you.
அனைவருக்கும் இனிய மதிய வணக்கம். எனது பெயர் எஸ் கலைச்செல்வி. எனக்கு வயசு 36. நான் தமிழ்நாட்டில் இருக்கிற கடலூர் மாவட்டம் முழுக்குத்துறைன்ற கிராமத்தில் இருந்து வந்திருக்கேன். நான் ஒரு மீனவ சமுதாயத்து பெண், ஒரு விதவை. நான் தினமும் சூரியன் உதைக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடியே மார்க்கெட்டுக்கு போய் இறங்கு தளத்துக்கு போய் மீனை வாங்கி பின்னர் கூடையில் வச்சு தலையில் சுமந்து சுற்றி உள்ள கிராமங்களுக்கு நான் விற்பனை செய்து வருகிறேன். இதுதான் என்னோட குடும்பத்தோட ஆதரிக்கும் வாழ்வாதாரம். என் சமூகத்தில் மீன் வெறும் உணவு மட்டும் கிடையாது, அது வாழ்க்கை மற்றும் ஆரோக்கியம். மீன் எங்களுக்கு மிக முக்கியமான புரத மூலமாகும். இது குழந்தைகளுக்கும் வலிமையை தருகிறது, பெண்களுக்கு ஆரோக்கியத்திற்கும் மேம்படுத்துகிறது. மற்றும் கோழி மற்றும் இறைச்சி போன்ற விலையுயர்ந்த உணவுகளை வாங்க முடியாத குடும்பங்களுக்கு ஆதரவாக உள்ளது. முன்பு எங்ககிட்ட பல்வேறு வகையான மீன்கள் ஏராளமாக கிடைச்சிது. உதாரணத்துக்கு மத்தி, காணாங்கத்தை, நெத்திலி, கிழங்கான் மீன், நண்டு மற்றும் பல இனங்கள் மொத்தமாக வரும். எங்கள் வீடுகளுக்கு இதை நாங்கள் கொண்டு சென்று நிறைய உணவு இதை எடுத்துப்போம். இது எங்கள் ஊட்டச்சத்து மட்டுமல்லாமல் மருத்துவ நன்மைகளையும் எங்களுக்கு கொடுக்குது. உதாரணமாக காரை மீன், பால் சொரா, திரிக்கை மீன்கள் கர்ப்பிணி பெண்களுக்கு மற்றும் புதிய தாய்மார்களுக்கு இது சிறப்பான கொடுக்கப்பட்டது. இந்த மீன்கள் அவர்கள் பிரசவத்திற்கான பிந்தைய மீழ்ச்சிக்கு இன்றியமையாததாக இது நாங்கள் கருதுகிறோம். இது இரத்த சோகை உள்ளவர்களுக்கு தொடர்ச்சியாக இந்த மத்தி மீன் சொல்கிற மீனை சாப்பிட்டு வந்தாங்கன்னா அவங்களுக்கு இந்த மருத்துவர்களே அறிவுறுக்கிறாங்க இது சரியான உணவு அப்படின்னு சொல்லி. எங்கள் வீட்டிலையே நாங்கள் இதை நான் பார்த்துருக்குறேன். மத்தி மீனை சாப்பிட்ட பிறகு மற்ற உணவுகளை விட இரத்த சிகப்பு அளவு திறம்பட அதிகரிக்கிறத நாங்கள் பார்த்துருக்கோம். மற்றும் நாங்கள் விழிப்புணர்வு நிகழ்ச்சிகள் மற்றும் மருத்துவர்களின் வழிகாட்டுதல் மூலம் இந்த மீனில் இருக்கிற நல்ல கொழுப்பு அமிலங்கள், நுண்ணூட்ட சத்துக்கள் நிறைந்துள்ளது என்பதை நாங்கள் அறிந்து கொண்டோம். ஆனால் இன்னைக்கு நிலைமை ரொம்ப மாறிடுச்சு. அதிகப்படியான மீன்பிடிப்பு காலநிலை மாற்றம், மாசுபாடு மற்றும் மீன் வாழ்விட அழிவு காரணமாக மீன்பிடிப்பு வெகுவாக இப்போ குறைஞ்சிடுச்சு. முன்னாடி பெரிய மீன் ஆரோக்கியமான மீன்களை நாங்கள் பிடித்தோம். இப்போ அந்த இடத்துல பெரும்பாலான ஒரு சிறிய மீன்கள், அதுவும் குறைவான மீன்கள் தான் அந்த இடத்துல எங்களுக்கு கிடைக்குது. மேலும் பெரும்பாலான மீன்கள் கிடைச்சாலும் அதை பெரும்பாலும் நாங்கள் வருமானத்துக்காக சந்தையில் விற்கப்படுறோம். நாங்கள் குறைவான மதிப்புள்ள வகையான மீன்களை மட்டுமே வீட்டுக்கு கொண்டு செல்கிறோம். சில சமயங்களில் அதுவும் கிடையாது, சும்மாவே வீட்டுக்கு நாங்கள் போயிடுவோம். இதன் விளைவாக வீட்டில் மீன் சாப்பிடுவது இப்போ குறைஞ்சிடுச்சு. அணுகலை விரிவுபடுத்த என்ன உதவுமானால், ஊட்டச்சத்து நிறைந்த மீனை பரவலாக கிடைக்க செய்யவும் மலிவாக விலையில் வாங்கவும் சில முக்கியமான நடவடிக்கைகளை நாம் எடுக்க வேண்டும். சிறிய அளவிலான மீன்களை சவால்களை மதிப்பு கூட்டுதல் மூலம் சமாளித்தல். ஒரு பிரச்சனை என்னன்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா, சிறிய அளவிலான மீன்கள் வந்து சந்தைகளுக்கு மிக குறைவான விலையில் வந்து எங்களுக்கு கிடைக்குது. இதை சமாளிக்க நாங்கள் வந்து மதிப்பு கூட்டுதலில் வந்து கவனம் வந்து செலுத்தி வருகிறோம். எம்எஸ் சுவாமிநாதன் ஆராய்ச்சி நிறுவனம் மூலியமாக எங்களுக்கு பயிற்சி கொடுத்தாங்க. அதில் வந்து எங்கள் பெண்கள் வந்து உலர்ந்த மீன்கள் மற்றும் மீன் ஊறுகாய், மீன் பொடி, அப்புறம் வந்து நெத்திலி மீன், அப்புறம் இது எல்லாமே எங்களுக்கு மதிப்பு கூட்டும் பொருளாக வந்து சுகாதாரமான முறையில் கையாளவும் தயாரிக்கவும் எங்களுக்கு வந்து கற்றுக் கொடுத்தாங்க. இந்த தயாரிப்புகள் வந்து சிறந்த விலை பெறுகின்றன. மேலும் ஊட்டச்சத்து நிறைந்த மீனை நுகர்வோருக்கு புதிய வடிவங்களில் கிடைக்க நாங்கள் செய்கிறோம். சூரிய உலர்த்திகள் பயன்படுத்தி சுகாதாரமான உலர்ந்த மீனை மேம்படுத்துதல். முன்பு வந்து பெண்கள் வந்து மீனை வந்து திறந்த வெளியில் வந்து உலர்த்தினாங்க. அது வந்து துர்நாற்றம் மற்றும் வாங்குபவர்களுக்கும் வந்து நிராகரித்தாங்க. ஆனால் எம்எஸ்ஆர் சுவாமிநாதன் ஆராய்ச்சி நிறுவனம் மூலியமாக சூரிய உலர்த்திகளை அறிமுகப்படுத்திய பிறகு நாங்கள் சுத்தமான ஊட்டச்சத்து நிறைந்த உலர்ந்த மீனை நீண்ட ஆயுளுடன் தயாரித்து கற்றுக்கொண்டோம். இன்னைக்கு வந்து இந்த தயாரிப்புகள் வந்து பரவலாக ஏற்கொள்ளப்பட்டது. பல்பொருள் அங்காடியிலும் வந்து இதை வந்து விற்பனை செய்ய வசதி. மேலும் வந்து பல பெண்கள் விரிவுபடுத்துவது ஊட்டச்சத்து மற்றும் வருமான வாய்ப்புகள் இரண்டையும் வந்து அதிகரிக்கும். முக்கியமான ஒரு கருத்து, அரசு வந்து ஊட்டச்சத்து திட்டங்கள் மீனையும் சேர்க்கணும். மீன் வந்து ஒரு சக்தி வாய்ந்த புரத மூலமாகும். புதிய மீன் அல்லது சுகாதாரமான உலர்ந்த மீனை வாரத்திற்கு 2 முறையாவது பள்ளி உணவு, மதிய உணவு, அங்கன்வாடி ஊட்டச்சத்து திட்டங்களில் சேர்த்தால் அது குழந்தைகளின் ஆரோக்கியத்தை மேம்படுத்துவதோடு மீனவ பெண்களின் தயாரிப்புகளுக்கும் நிலையான தேவையா உருவாகும். சமூக அளவில் குளிர் சேமிப்பு வசதிகள். மீன் வந்து மிக விரைவில் வந்து கெட்டு போயிடும் தன்மை கொண்டது. பல பெண்கள்கிட்ட வந்து இப்போ ஸ்டோரேஜ் பாக்ஸ் வந்து இல்லை. அது வந்து ஒரு சிறிய அளவிலாக கூட எங்கள்கிட்ட இருக்குது. நம்பகமான சமூக குளிர் சேமிப்பு வசதிகள். மீன் வந்து ஒரு குறைஞ்ச விலையில் கிடைக்கும் போது எங்களுக்கு வந்து ஸ்டோரேஜ் பாக்ஸ் வந்து இருந்ததுன்னா அதை வந்து அதில் வந்து ஸ்டோரேஜ் பண்ணி திரும்ப வந்து மறுநாள் வந்து அதை வந்து எங்கள் விற்பனைக்கு எடுத்துக்கொள்கிறதுக்கு கொஞ்சம் வசதியாக இருக்கும். இப்போ பார்த்தீங்கன்னா பெண்களுக்கு வந்து ஏற்ற போக்குவரத்து வந்து நம்மள பெரும்பாலானோருக்கு எங்களுக்கு கிடையாது. இப்போ கனமான வந்து கூடைகளை வந்து தலையில் சுமந்து நீண்ட தூரம் நாங்கள் நடந்து செல்றதால எங்களுக்கு தீவிரமான உடல் வந்து பிரச்சனை ஆகுது. அப்புறம் இது தீவிர உடல் பிரச்சனை கொண்டு வர்றது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் எங்களுக்கு விற்கக்கூடிய தூரத்தையும் வந்து எங்களுக்கு குறைக்குது. மீன் விற்பனை செய்யும் பெண்களுக்கு பனிக்கட்டிகள் பொருத்தப்பட்ட எளிய வாகனங்கள் அல்லது மிதிவண்டிகள் கிடைத்தால் அவர்கள் மேலும் பயணம் வந்து புதிய சந்தைகளை வந்து அடையிறதுக்கு எங்களுக்கு முடியும். எங்களோட உடம்பு சுமையையும் வந்து கொஞ்சம் குறைக்க முடியும். கடைசியா மற்றும் மிக முக்கியமான ஒரு விஷயம், மீனவ பெண்களை வந்து ஒரு விவசாயிகளாக வந்து அங்கீகரிப்பது. ஏனென்றால் நாங்களும் வந்து இயற்கையிடம் இருந்து மக்களுக்கு உணவை கொண்டு வருகிறோம். சரியான ஆதரவு மற்றும் அங்கீகாரம் கிடைத்தால் மீனவ பெண்கள் வந்து ஊட்டச்சத்து பாதுகாப்பை உருவாக்குவதில் மிக முக்கியமான பங்கை வகிக்க முடியும் என்று சொல்லி நன்றி.
Thank you very much for this excellent perspective, and I really admire how you bring together the understanding of the natural environment, the appreciation of technology and science, the understanding of nutrition and the value of fish, including small fish, and the business rationale and the business energy. I think this is an example for all of us working at all levels, locally, at country level, even globally, that all these ingredients are needed to achieve those outcomes. And thank you also, as you mentioned, to the support by the Swaminathan Foundation on that. Which brings us to our next panelist, Dr. Oliver King, who is the director for the Biodiversity Program at the Swaminathan Research Foundation. And he's, over the years, has been very deeply involved in community-based models for crop genetic diversity utilization and agrobiodiversity conservation. Dr. King, if you can reflect on that and how, in your experience, greater on-farm and landscape-wide biodiversity can be mobilized to improve diet diversity and nutrition outcomes, both in rural communities as well as in the more distant urban populations that also depend on healthy diets. Thank you, Dr. King.
Uh, thank, thank you very much for this opportunity. Um, the on-farm biodiversity, when we talk about, we are actually very specific to agrobiodiversity. It is very much connected to their culture and their food and also their kind of livelihoods. This is what we see wherever we work in agroecologies in the country. Primarily, the custodian of this biodiversity, agrobiodiversity, are women and the indigenous communities and smallholders. They are actually promoting this biodiversity by default. But over a period of time, when we see that there is a steep decline in this agrobiodiversity in farms, that is what witnessed, whichever the agroecology. So, in order to have this good diet, diversified diet on plates, let it be for the urban population or peri-urban population or rural population or tribal areas, certainly there is a lot to be done, and that has been done in the recent times after realization of hidden hunger. Of course, as far as India is concerned, we are actually secured with food security in terms of major staple crops and based diets. But increasingly, the protein, energy, malnutrition, and also the hidden hunger, particularly the micronutrient deficiency, is alarmingly high. So when we see that there is a need for actually conserving and restoring agrobiodiversity in the landscape is imperative. But how this can be done, and who can do this, and what kind of a support system is enabling environment is needed, which is what actually we need to really look at it. There are many methods, foundation, MS Swaminathan Foundation. Not only that, across the country, many constituency partner, like-minded organizations are doing at different scales and different agroecologies. For example, in a rural setting, women are either the growers, conservers, and also harvesters from the own landscape that they brings to their kitchen, and then that goes to their plates. So if you carefully look at it, the seed is a major concern. The seed on-farm diversity, which they have been valorizing for a long time, that has been declining. The second major concern is that always they compare with the profitability and productivity and profitability, particularly when there is a inroad of cash crops in that domain that impacts their interest in terms of choice of crop or decision making, what to grow in their farms. The third bottleneck, particularly for women, is that increasingly the time is being shared for many other purposes, both productivity purposes and also caretaking purposes and so on. The time is very, very limited for them. Many of these crops are having a kind of drudgery in terms of processing, bringing into their plate. And the final one is lack of support for rural markets. In India, the rural markets, particularly the tribal hearts, rural markets are not supported much. So as long as we address this issue more an integrated way, the strengthening the seed system, and there is a lot of participatory approaches are needed, understanding and providing their importance for the traditional knowledge of the local community, making their own choice of the crop in their farms. Are we doing that well in terms of women choice of the crop genetic resources, particularly the varieties? And third aspect is that provisioning of small equipments and facilities for them to process it at the household level or at the village level, so that people can participate more in terms of harnessing this agrobiodiversity and supporting them with rural market. I think this is more important because they are the producer, primary producer. They are not just producing for themselves, and also they are producing for the entire value chain. The other approach is that the policy support. India is established with midday meal program, nutrition program, even urban settings also, many states, they are now starting with a meal program for urban children and so on. And less privileged segment also they are having it. So integrating this agrobiodiversity value chain to public procurement program is also another angle. So, if you look at millets, is a major case in India. The last 10 years, thanks to the government, they have valorized and supported in large scale. That is directly connected to address the, micronutrient deficiency in many landscape. Similarly, there is a lot of potential in tubers and green leafy vegetables and many other. For example, our sister is here. She talked about fish, but there are many molluscans in the estuarine area, which is only used by the local community, less popularized, less valued, and that can be also mainstream. That comes from the animal genetic diversity. So there is a lot of scope for mainstreaming it. The mainstreaming and supporting this kind of method is most important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. King. It's excellent to hear that the range of diversity that is available, and you said almost by default, is what farmers are using. At the same time, you say that we need intentional efforts to strengthen it, to safeguard it, and to utilize it to better effect locally, as well as then connecting it to wider markets, and maybe also to other countries in the end, because the diversity that India has on food crop and on animal genetic resources is of global significance. And the global community will require those kind of partnerships. Thank you again. And it brings me to our next panelist, Dr. Kalyani Akunathan, who is a research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, based here in Delhi, and who's an expert as an economist on making those linkages and telling us a little bit about the evidence that IFPRI's work, together with Indian partners, has generated on what happens if we intentionally try to strengthen nutrition focus of agricultural interventions. Dr. Kalyani, tell us a bit, what is the evidence and how strong is it that nutrition actually can be improved and health outcomes can be improved from a more intentional agriculture? And where do you see the biggest gaps right now that still need to be addressed?
Yeah, okay, that's working. So thanks a lot. I think it's come up in multiple interjections from the speakers about the need for a purpose and an intentionality to this approach. And so what I'll draw on is 3 different studies that IFPRI has done over the last 5 or 6 years. 2 of which were based in India, where I was closely involved with the research. One which was conducted by our colleagues in Bangladesh. And those really provide sort of evidence through rigorous research, in 2 cases an RCT and 1 quasi-experimental research, on how really adding that intentionality takes you beyond just agriculture for income generation towards agriculture for supporting nutrition outcomes. So the 2 programs in India, both of them were with women self-help groups. One was with the Jivika self-help groups in Bihar. The other was with Pradhan in 5 states of northern and central and eastern India. And in both of those, given the women self-help group setup, the focus was already on agriculture and livelihoods. But a lot of the intent and purpose there was agriculture and livelihoods for income generation. And so there was focus on improving a package of practices and improving systems around staple crops and cash crops, but less of an emphasis on actually moving beyond yield enhancements and income generation towards growing for nutrition security. And so the 2 programs that we evaluated sort of added a nutrition angle to that, where there was nutrition behavior change communication, but also a very focused intentionality on adapting thematic interventions around agriculture and livelihoods to better incorporate nutrition objectives. And what we found is that in both cases, we see a strong impact on dietary diversity. The timeline of the evaluation doesn't allow us to go all the way through to health outcomes. Do we see some impacts on women's BMI? But we know that diets, better diets, more diverse diets are linked to micronutrient sufficiency, to lower morbidity. And so just as an example, in Bihar, we saw a 30% increase as a result of these interventions in the proportion of women who were attaining minimum dietary diversity. We see a corresponding increase in the proportion of children who are attaining minimum dietary diversity. And there we see the largest increases are coming from fruits, vegetables, dairy, and pulses, so precisely the food groups that we really want to promote and push. And similarly, in the Pradhan evaluation, we saw a protective impact on expenditure on animal-sourced foods, and also an overall increase in expenditure on food items relative to non-food items. In Bangladesh, the intervention was similar, but here it actually targeted both men and women, so it went beyond just the women targeting that we saw in the case of India. And there they had an agriculture arm, a nutrition arm, and then something that combined agriculture with nutrition. So across the board, we see impacts on, sort of modest impacts on homestead food production, but it's really the intentional addition of nutrition to agriculture where we saw impacts both on food consumption and on household dietary diversity. And so really taking that additional step to kind of make that programming very intentional and very clear. In terms of barriers, in all three of these programs, the main intervention was information or behavior change communication. In the case of Bihar in particular, but also in the other study in India, these are very resource-constrained populations. And so I think an information-only intervention can only go so far. It allows for a reallocation of existing budgets. But in terms of barriers, I think access to resources that can really expand the set of foods that people can either produce or buy from the market, I think that's an intervention where we really need to see either in-kind or cash transfers. It speaks also to the point about social protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very insightful evidence here from those studies in India and in Bangladesh. And clear, right? Markets can work for nutrition, and people are ready to invest in their own health and that of their families. We can't be surprised by that. So there are other barriers and other constraints that are of economic nature, availability and access, physical access sometimes, to nutritious, healthy and fresh foods. So we keep that in mind. And one of the pieces of evidence you shared is that with increased awareness, purchase of animal source foods also is increasing, right? Which of course, as we always knew, can be very nutrient dense. And it brings me to Dr. Shirley Tarawala, the Assistant Director General of the International Livestock Research Institute based in Nairobi. Dr. Shirley has also had a history of science, a science career, looking at crop and livestock integrated systems and pastoral systems working primarily in Africa. But Shirley, if I may ask you, from the perspective now of really making use of animal source foods for improving nutrition and health. We understand this is vital for nutrition outcomes, but also sometimes being questioned at the global and environmental level about the sustainability of animal source foods. How do you see this livestock contributing to healthier diets in the long run within a more diverse and resilient global and local food system? Thank you, Shirley.
Hello? Yeah. Thanks, Simon, and perfect segue from the previous speaker. Your question indeed seems a bit of a paradox, perhaps a conundrum, but I think it's one we can solve. For livestock, we need triple wins. We need to address demand, contribute to development, and mitigate harms. Demand for milk, meat, eggs, now and in the future, so that every citizen can access a nutritious and healthy diet. We also need to make sure that livestock continue with a vital role in multiple development outcomes. There's 80 million people employed in this country in the livestock sector. Milk and meat contribute about 140 billion to the Indian economy in 2023. 91 for rice, 31 for wheat. Simon, I don't know potatoes. To ensure that harms are mitigated as the sector transitions to meet that demand, be they climate, environmental, or One Health that we heard about earlier this morning, food safety, zoonosis, antimicrobial resistance. Smart productivity increases mean less emissions per unit product, less animals to meet that demand, and better nourished animals emit less. At least 30% emissions reduction easily possible as we go forward. And that's not optional, it's essential. Milk, meat, eggs are essential for a healthy diet, and for many millions, a little bit more can make a huge difference to physical and cognitive outcomes. At the moment, we heard yesterday, the cost of a healthy diet here is about $4 per person per day, and about 40% of the population cannot afford that. Eggs and dairy in particular are associated with reduced stunting in children, for example, so really important. But also beyond that, to the broader food security, because we've talked a lot about crops, but probably about half the staple cereals in this country can only be produced because animals are part of the system. The integrated farms where about 80% of the ruminant livestock are raised are feeding the nation. And in those livestock provide manure, traction, and especially timely income with which to purchase seeds or fertilizer when the rains come. So triple wins are definitely possible, and we need to combine science, innovation, and engagement to make that happen. Science-based technical solutions, animal health, vaccines, diagnostics, the right breed for the right environment, and better nutrition for the animals, innovative feed solutions, often using the byproducts of all these crops that we've just heard about being increased in productivity. Those new innovations need to be packaged and deployed at scale, tailored to those millions of small and medium farms. And we need new engagement across multiple partnerships, public, international, development, private, all of us working together towards action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley, for those very important arguments and the proposition that sustainable livestock and sustainable animal source foods is a not negotiable pillar of healthier diets around the world. And as you say, that the integration then with crops is key, and it's a two-way integration. And I'm very pleased to again welcome Dr. D.K. Yadav, the Deputy Director General of ICAR for Crop Science. Dr. Yadav is a very widely recognized scientist and a breeder of, I understand, brassica, a group of crops that's very nutrient dense. And hence, if you allow me, my question to you, Dr. Yadav, is speaking about India's crop science innovations and how to make crops more nutritious, more nutrient dense through genetic innovation. Things like biofortification and more climate resilient crops. How do you see the role of those technologies for addressing malnutrition while also meeting the needs, including the economic needs of smallholder farmers? Thank you.
Thank you. I think India, after independence during 1947, from an importer country, we are now self-sufficient in almost all the food commodities. And that could happen only because of the government policy and the establishment of a large number of research institutions, including 113 ICR institutes, 76 agriculture universities, and a huge network of the research. And we have almost 7 times enhancement in the total production from 50.82 million tons during 1950s, and currently 353.9 million tons. So that is a great achievement in food grains, and likewise in case of oilseeds, it is 8 times multiple higher production, 10 times in case of cotton, and more than 8.5 times in case of the sugar cane. In the race of higher productivity and higher production, somewhere we missed the nutritional aspect. And towards that, the efforts were made. Honorable Professor M.S. Swaminathan, he was always of the view that the nutrition is a essential component of whatsoever we are enhancing in case of the quantum in the production or productivity. So nutrition should be one of the integral part of that. And as a result, Professor Swaminathan presented one of the India's nutritional strategy during 2017, which was launched by Honorable Prime Minister and which is being followed by the different departments. So the common challenge for the malnutrition or the hidden hunger is not only for India, but it is a global challenge. And in this direction, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research has started the work on nutrition from 1972 onwards. And if we talk of today, so the whole National Agriculture Research System under the able guidance of the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, we are working on the biofortification of the different crops, and we all are well aware that the biofortification is one of the most, I think, viable and sustainable way for removal or alleviation of the malnutrition. So in this direction, our Professor S.K. Vassal, he during 1970s, he already given the QPM in case of maize, and he was decorated with the World Food Prize as well as by the Government of India last year, decorated with him the Padam Shri, the highest award, the decoration in the country. And the various CG systems also, initially the ICARDA, the CIMET, the Harvest Plus programs, they are also supporting our biofortification program in the country. And the realizing the need or the necessity of the biofortification, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research launched a consortia research platform during 1914-15, and under that a large number of crops were covered, and we are already working on that. And since 1942-72, as I mentioned, we have almost 190 field crops which are biofortified, and 19 horticulture crops are also there. Among that, we are dealing with, in case of field crops, 16 crops are there, including the rice, wheat, maize, all the millets, including finger millet. And in pulses, we have the lentil, chickpea, field pea, fava bean, and in oilseed, mustard, soybean, groundnut. So these are the major crops, and we are addressing the 12 traits in our National Agriculture Research programs, including the iron, zinc, calcium, protein, lysine, tryptophan, vitamins, and anthocyanin, oleic acid, and linoleic acid, and likewise some anti-nutritional factors, they are also being addressed through our research program, like in case of mustard, erucic acid and glucosinate, the phytate content, the trypsin inhibitor, and the lipocogenase. So these are the various anti-nutritional factors. And even in some of the varieties, we have 2 to 4 traits which we have stacked, like in case of maize, we have already 4-5 hybrids which are very popular. And one of the advantage of this program is that there is no yield penalty in case of the biofortified varieties, and they are as good as your conventional or traditional varieties. And currently almost 19 to 20 million hectare area is under the biofortified crops, which has the maximum area under wheat, almost 14.5 million hectare area, almost 50% of the total wheat area in the country is now under the biofortified variety, like in case of rice, in case of pearl millet also, we have made a benchmark in pearl millet long back. The director is sitting here. So now whatsoever material is coming, that is all biofortified, and we licensed these biofortified material during last 7 years to 300 private seed companies who have come in a big way, and more than 1,500 memoranda of understanding to share the material they have been signed, and now they are producing the seed and marketing to the various farming community. And from our side, from the council side, 4,600 quintals of the breeder seed of these biofortified varieties has been produced during last 4-5 years, and that has been supplied to the various the agencies for the downstream multiplication in the foundation and certified seeds. So that shows that how these varieties are being taken to the farmers, and ultimately the product is reaching to the general consumers. So India is the, I think, leading country in terms of the publication globally on the biofortification, as well as the ICR is leading for the various publication globally if we talk. So now our Honorable Prime Minister is also personally involved in the various activities of biofortification, promoting the biofortification. He had 3 programs during last 3-4 years for the promotion of the biofortified varieties, and one of the latest program was held in the our Indian Agriculture Research Institute itself last year in the month of August, where he interacted with the scientists and the farmers for promotion of these varieties. Now the way forward is that we should accelerate the breeding program by using the latest technologies like the double haploidy, the various speed breeding facility, as well as gene editing, which we are already working. The nutri-rich cultivar, multi-nutri-rich cultivar is now our target, rather than having 1 or 2 traits. And the bioavailability studies of the nutrients, which is one of the lacking component, and now we have started in some of the crops for the bioavailability. So rather than enhancing the nutrition, we should look after the better bioavailability of these components in the various, and rapid detection tools for the various biofortified material. Generally, when the farmers are going to the mandi, so generally they are getting the same price as they are getting for the normal crops, because there is no system of the detection of the biofortified value of those crops. So on that also we need to work. And the impact assessment of these materials, as I told in the case of wheat, we have a now major area in case of the wheat for the biofortified varieties. A strong collaboration with the national and international institutions is also required. The extension system again, and I think the school level nutritional literacy, that also we need to start, so that from the school level the students, they are having the awareness about the nutrients and the malnutrition problem that is eradicated or elevated from the natural system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yadav. I think we can hear the power of science and of crop science to really make breakthroughs for nutrition density of crops that we used to, and they can become much greater contributors to micronutrient supplies. And we greatly admire and congratulations on the achievements, particularly here in India, which, as we know, is one of the largest food systems in the world and one of the largest agriculture research systems. So thank you for sharing all those perspectives. Time is not on our side, and I must, don't need to remind you that we are standing also between our panel and lunch coming up, and we'll have a particular culinary presentation here on stage after this panel. But I don't want to let you go yet. One closing question, if you don't mind, to the panelists, to say, looking ahead 10 years from now, what needs to change? What's the one thing from your perspective that you would like to see change in the agri-food system to make it even more nutritious, even more effective to provide healthy diets for all? And I would like to start with Dr. King, and then everybody, we said you have 1 minute, you have more like 30 seconds now. Dr. King, take this phone.
Thank you. So in my view, down the line in 10 years, I think increasing support for on-farm conservation efforts, particularly for the smallholder farmers, they can contribute a lot, particularly tribal women and tribal communities and smallholders. The second one is policy integration and mainstreaming in it. Third one is consumer awareness. It has to be mainstream for larger population, supporting the novelty of these local crops and varieties and breeds, increasing awareness among the public. That is most important.
Thank you very much. You may just pass the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to build on what a lot of people have said, but I think strengthening social protection systems that deliver nutrition security, go beyond just food security to delivering nutrition security, and building on what some of my colleagues have said, rethinking the ICDA's midday meal schemes to incorporate local indigenous foods. You can have insects, you can have small fish, you can have common property resources, foraged foods. Converging other programs to strengthen value chains, but also delivering on equity. And I think I haven't heard that said so far, but particularly in this region, what kinds of foods you can access depends a lot on your gender, your caste, your class. And so a social protection system that strengthens incomes and increases the affordability and accessibility of nutritious diets. Thanks.
For me, it's about being more intentional about recognizing and harvesting diversity. Harness diverse pathways and starting points for sustainable food systems so that we get to the same endpoint, more nourishing, accessible, affordable, safe and sustainable food systems. The diversity of commodities, milk, meat, eggs, fish, cereals, legumes, we've mentioned nearly all of them here. And harness the diversity of stakeholders and partners, the newest innovations. Stakeholders and partners, age, gender, connected in new ways to make transformation happen. And a final aspect of diversity for DialogueNEXT may be to think about Africa next.
Thank you, Dr. Yadawa. You may take the next one.
Thank you. Thank you. I think our target for next 10 years should be that all the crops where we have the nutritional requirement, so the benchmark for the nutrition that should be fixed for all the crops, and there is then no problem of segregation of biofortified or not biofortified. That will be the one of the most important and sustainable way to alleviate the malnutrition. Secondly, we should promote these varieties and hybrids in the different crops which I have mentioned in the other countries also where we have the same agroclimatic conditions, so that the advantage of these materials, this can go not only to India but globally also. And the third one is regarding the incentivizing the farmers. Because as on today, whatsoever, as I mentioned earlier also, that we should have a mechanism to segregate the biofortified and non-biofortified, and the farmers, they should be incentivized so that they can come forward for production and supply of more grains of biofortified material, which will definitely help in alleviating the malnutrition. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think you all agree with me that we had a very inspiring panel from very different perspectives and professions and practices, all of which is needed, right? So one, my take-home messages is, it's about the diversity of the approaches and the connectivity of different stakeholders in science, in actual practice, trade of food, and the longer-term research perspectives, together with policy and together with business. And having that connectivity strengthened, I think, is one of the commitments perhaps for our DialogueNEXT platform, and to bring that to the world and to Africa and the countries that may not have the same capacity in country as India does, and to build on those international corporations. The one aspect I would add, if you allow me, as a facilitator, is the consumer, right? The consumer in our profession often is more like the last stage in the process, often implicitly seen as the passive recipient of food. Whereas, in fact, if you look at it economically, consumer has a lot of power in the food system. How do we mobilize the power of the consumer as a force for good, as a force for innovation, as a force to incentivize businesses and farmers to move towards healthier food systems? That's maybe a question for the next DialogueNEXT, and we look forward to that. So please join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions. Thank you.